This program is brought to you by 3C TV. Like what you learned? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up on the latest 3C TV programs.
Linda Michalowski. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Student Services and Special Programs at the State Chancellor's Office in Sacramento. And it's such an honor to be able to moderate this panel. You've heard it said over and over again during the event so far. The Veterans Resource Center is the #1 key to serving veteran students on your campuses. And so we have some people who have experience in building and growing Veterans Resource Centers on their campuses who are going to share with you their perspective and their experience so that it can facilitate what you're doing on your campuses. Our first presenter is going to be Dr. Arnulfo Cedillo, who's the Director of Student Affairs at College of Marin. He also happens to be President of the Board of Trustees for Chabot Las Positas Community College District, so you heard his chancellor talk yesterday noon about her experiences. Arnulfo has supervised health services, associated students and student clubs, food services, the Puente program, single stop services center, and veterans services. And the college has established a Veterans Resource Center just last year. So he is the newest Veterans Resource Center administrator here at the table. Second, we're going to hear from Michael Dianelli, who's the Dean of Language Arts and Visual and Performing Arts at Chaffey College. And he was co-founder of their Veterans Resource Center that was that they began building in 2009 and it actually opened in 2010. And third, we have Patricia Dorange Martin, who is the coordinator for Veterans Services and an associate professor of counseling at Pasadena City College. She founded the Veterans Resource Center at Pasadena in 2010, and she's been an active resource for her colleagues throughout the state and a leading advocate for veterans services. So before I turn it over to Arnulfo to start talking, I'm just curious, in the room, how many of you have a well-established Veterans Resource Center on your campus? Quite a few. How many have a new or a fledgling center or are on a definite timetable to open one? Very good. And how many of you are here just hoping to figure out how to do it on your campus? Okay, a very good mix. And so panelists, that's your audience. Take it away, Arnulfo.
First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to share with you what's happening with College of Marin. As you could tell by the introduction, I'm Director of Student Affairs and everything else they throw at you. And so about 2 years ago, the president asked me to oversee the development of a Veterans Resource Center. We already had a Veterans Association on the campus, students, and they had gone to President Kuhn and said, we want a center. We don't have anything, and we'd like for this campus to prioritize this and make it a higher priority. And it was given to me. So my first thing was to find a location. And like all the campuses, space is always at a premium. And nobody wanted to give us space. We had a couple of conference rooms that could easily have been used as a resource center. And the people that took ownership of those conference rooms said no. And so being that I'm the advisor for the student life aspect of the campus, I just figured we're one of the few campuses that actually have had and still has student offices for student clubs. And the Veterans Association had a club room. And then I just said, you know, what if I tear this wall down and take the club next door? And so I told the clubs that were in the next room, I'm taking over your room. And I just figured, I've got to do what I can. And the president had said, we'll help you in every way that we can. I'll make it a high priority, but I don't have any funding, which is not unusual. But I said, fine, because I'm going to take you up to your word on it. And I talked to the director of operations, and I said, I need this wall torn down. I need this room repainted. I need electrical outlets to be put here, and I need to be able to put computers. And he said, we don't have any funding, and I don't have the manpower. And I said, would you like for me to write a memo to the president and remind him about priorities? And he said, I think we can get it done. And so, and to be honest with you, it seemed like the president really was committed to this, but he was the only one committed to this, besides myself and the student vets. And so we said, no, we're going to do this. And so then what I did, in order to leverage this, the other part of my life is I oversee the Associated Students. And they're probably the only group on campus that has monies because they have a student fee. And so I actually went to the Associated Students as their advisor, and I said, I'm advising you to provide a $5,000 grant toward the Vets Association to put together a vet center. And I always talk to them about leaving a legacy. And I said, and if you do this, people will always remember it was this Associated Students that was responsible for putting together a vet center. And they gave us a $5,000 grant. Then I went to the College of Marin Foundation, and they love vets. And I said, I've gotten a $5,000 grant from the students, and I would like to at least get $1,000 from you folks. And they gave us $2,000. And so what I did then, I had the operations tear down that wall and open it up and put the electricals where we did. And so we ended up buying 3 computers. We ended up buying, putting furnishings that we always have at surplus on the campus, and then repainting the room. And we had this wonderful, elaborate opening, and everybody was excited with it. I was introduced to the Blue Star bombs, which are non-existent in Marin County, but we actually did find them, and they came onto the campus. And this is where I need to take a sight light and thank Todd from Las Positas College, because in my opinion, they have one of the better veteran centers up in Northern California. When you have a veteran celebration and they can land a Huey helicopter on the campus, you know they've got leverage. And so I asked Todd for assistance, and they provided us. For the opening, Catherine from Sierra College came and helped us and did a convocation presentation. So I brought it really up to where we wanted to highlight this whole thing. Here's the challenge for us today. I've got the computers, students come in, they utilize the center, but I don't have any staff. I put together a program review plan, and the vice president pulled it back, and he said, no, we need to discuss more about how we want to just look at the entire resource center. I'm currently staffed with 3 students who are paid through the Veterans Administration through their work-study program, and that's how I keep the center open. I do have the library, you know, the resource materials, and students do come in and crash and watch movies on their plasma TV that was provided for them. And it's a great place to crash. There's another community group that came in and provided us with a coffee maker and free coffee for anyone and everyone that ever walks into that. I think it's called Green Mountain, because they're in Marin County, Green Mountain Coffee. So they've always provided for a lifetime, they said. And now I've got students that don't want to make the coffee. So I have that. Now my future, this is why I said I wanted to come first, because I don't have staff. I don't have funding. And for the first time, I've got a commitment to have the certifying official come down to the center at least one day a week, and to have the Veterans Counselor the Veteran Counselor come down to my center one day a week. Remember, I'm currently staffing that through three work-study VA students. That's all I've got. But it's really taken off. We have approximately 85, 90 veterans on campus, 60 of which use the services. And so we actually have put together a Veterans Advisory Committee to begin to ramp up. And I'm looking to get some funding for staffing for this new academic year. And it's a great challenge. It's never boring. The students have set aside another $5,000 for this year. Our veterans are wanting a Keurig coffee maker, so it kind of makes its own coffee. They're wanting a new sofa to be placed in there, and they have the monies. The Blue Star moms have finally connected with us, and they're providing us with gift cards for veterans, needy families. The wonderful dilemma, let me finish with this. Our food service folks on campus, as part of their contract, they're supposed to give us $1,000 per year to the charity that is designated by the Associated Students. I talked to the leadership of the Associated Students, and I had been given direction by our financial people that we could not give money to off-campus groups. So I said, great, I'll give it to the veterans. Because to me, they're an on-campus charity. I can always decide when I define things. And so I did, and we put the money in there, and then our financial people said, no, the contract is very clear. It's got to be a 501c3 designated charity organization. So I said, okay, please don't read this wrong, but I am a board member in another district. So I said, you want to play games? I'll play games. And so what I did was I talked to the Blue Star moms, and we have agreed that we will give them the $1,000. They'll turn around and give it back to us as scholarships to veterans. And now I have $2,000 that I can pull out of that account, give it to the Blue Star moms. They'll give it back to us at $500 scholarships to vets. So we're working, we're doing everything we can, and I only wish that I could grow up and be like my colleagues on my sides, because they do so much more, and that's where I want to go. Thank you.
Michael? Thank you very much. I think we all experience the same thing, that out of nothing came something. The VRCs, the Veterans Resource Centers, grew out of absolutely nothing, and it's been a tremendous success. On our campus, it evolved from a series of complaints by student veterans saying they were not getting served properly, they were waiting in lines, they were meeting with people who did not know too much about what a veteran needs and what post 9/11 bill was and what VREP was, what all kinds of different programs were. And so a board member got wind of it, and he was a Vietnam vet, and so he directed the president to take action. And of the 50 or so administrators on our campus, including directors, deans, and vice presidents, I was the only one that had prior military service. So I got tapped for the job, naturally, whether or not I was capable or not. And so with the dean of admissions and records, we formed a committee called the Veterans Response Team in 2009. And that team consisted of faculty, staff, administrators, and student veterans from all three of our campus. We're a three-campus community college. And we met for over a year and established priorities. Of course, the linchpin of everything that we established was the Veterans Resource Center, but we did respond to the needs of our student veterans, and we created not just the Veterans Resource Center, which opened up in 2010, but we also created something called Safe Zones, which we recruited faculty and staff from all three campuses, and we gave them placards, posters, which was the United States flag with an outline of a veteran in it, and saying veterans welcome. So these safe zones were created for student veterans. If they were having a tough time, they just needed somebody to talk to, they weren't understanding their instructor, or whatever the problem was, they could go to these safe zones on any three of our campuses and talk to someone who was sensitive to their needs. So as a result, I think over the years the program has been working quite well. But I'm in a unique situation because I think most of the Veterans Resource Centers are student services driven, and I'm an academic dean. And I saw the need right off to connect the student veterans to the academic programs, not just simply hang out in the Veterans Center, to be among fellow veterans, and to use the services there. By the way, our Veterans Resource Center costs exactly $0. Everything was done by donations. The space was provided, of course, by the college, and the services, the computers inside were also donated. even the Sons of Italy of Fontana donated a plasma TV screen, so we went out outreach, and an engineering firm donated all the furniture, the rugs and the couches and the chairs. So everything was put together through donations. Coffee pot was donated, and like ASCC is providing coffee for us, water for us. Now we have water in there. The student government is providing that. So everything's been done on donations. But we realized the need that many of the students were struggling academically too, even though we have a great number of services on our campus. I took it upon myself to try and make connections, since I was an academic dean in charge of visual performing arts, which has our museum, our gallery, and also language arts, which has the very large English department, and our One Book, One College program, which has been around for 20 years, which we identify one book each year to be used interdisciplinary-wise throughout the whole campus. So all of that came to be and started come together. But in the Veterans Resource Center, what we tried to do is make it a strong base. And that base, when it opened, was that it was going to be a single-stop or one-stop center, that the Veterans Certifying Official would be embedded in the center. That took some time, because the Admissions and Records did not want to release her immediately to the Veterans Resource Center. But we're serving approximately 400 veterans, and she was being multiply used at Admissions and Records, and the veterans were not being serviced properly. So we embedded her into the Veterans Resource Center, and now she's dedicated fully only to dealing with veterans. And also, in the lines that form an admission records, we all have them, don't we? Huh? Yeah. And when those lines, we have frontline personnel going up and asking students, are there any veterans in line? If there are, those veterans are then taken directly to the Veterans One-Stop Center. The other thing we did, too, was to embed the Veterans Counselor in the Veterans Resource Center. And I think this is very crucial to the success of a Veterans Resource Center, that you have the counselor and the certifying official embedded in the center. The other thing is that the financial aid be accessible, those people be trained in veterans' needs as well. So we've got this all pretty much together, and it's been working, I think, very well. We worked also very closely with DPS. They were on board on the Veterans Response Team from the get-go, so we have adaptive software in the Veterans Resource Center to those student veterans who need that kind of assistance. We also developed a textbook rental program in which the Board of Governors, our governing board, and our president and all the vice presidents donated money to a textbook fund for student veterans who could not get their disbursements early enough to buy textbooks. We established with the bookstore a rolling textbook fund where they can go in and purchase these, rent these books, and then return them, and then the funds would be regenerated for the next group of students that came through who needed those kinds of funds. So we were very conscious of that. As I said earlier, I was very much involved in trying to develop some connection to the academic programs for our student veterans. So they were not just individually going out and taking courses, but they were actually connected to the college academic community as well. And so we had certain programs such as the Chafee Review, which this year won the Best Creative Arts Journal in Community Colleges of California. This particular issue was War and Peace, and I wrote a little nonfiction article in there as well, but veterans also contributed to many of the articles and pieces, poetry and short fiction that are in here. And we had various programs associated with this particular issue, launch parties and such, readings and such, which the veterans were also part of. As I said before, we also have a college book program, which is the 20th year. I was a founding member of that in 19 92 or 3, I forget which year it was. But the last 2 years, last year our book was The Glass Castle. I know some of you are familiar with it. It was about a dysfunctional family, and the father was a Air Force veteran. And many of the questions and discussions and panels were involved with that text as well. And so what happened is that various programs, we had about a dozen or so throughout the year where student veterans participated. Some of them, let's see if I can pull it out real quick. Well, a panel discussion called Through Vetted Eyes, and where student veterans took particular issues from the text, from the book itself, and then discussed them in light of their own experiences as as well. So a lot of these programs, again, this year our book was Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. It's a Vietnam memoir, and dear to me. I taught it as a former English professor at the University of Maryland. I taught that book several times in my my composition classes, and so that was our book this year. And we've had several programs dealing with that particular text, and veterans are deeply involved in that. We also had the Vietnam Bikers. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're a group of Vietnam vets who have Harleys, and they're all decorated, and they go around the various high schools and colleges and such, and they discuss their experiences with students. And we had them at Chaffey College this in connection with the college book. And as a result of that, we had over 150 students interact with these 20 bikers who came to Chaffey College. And again, the vets were also, the younger student vets were also involved in that as well. And then I think, too, we established a Veterans Club, which through the student government, under the auspices of the student government, and now we've connected that club very closely with the Veterans Resource Center. In fact, when the Veterans Club holds their meetings, they hold them in the Veterans Resource Center. So, you know, it's been a wonderful and you know, really exhausting experience for the last four years. I make a point of it. I visit the, even though I'm a dean of 2 schools, I visit the center twice a day. I sit down, have coffee, talk, and I use my muscle, or some people call it juice, you know, when they have difficulty getting into a particular class. I try to ease that process for them, and I find faculty very welcoming to have student veterans in their programs and in their classes too. So they'll make that extra space. I'm very convincing when I go out there and I say, this is a student veteran. He's just come back from Afghanistan, or she's just come back from Afghanistan, and I've painted a nice picture, and something happened, a glitch in the system, couldn't get the class, and then all of a sudden, oh, we'll let her in, don't worry about it, you know, we'll have that. And the feedback that I get, that student veterans as students, you know, when the faculty actually kind of have them in class and realize, you know, what their backgrounds contribute to the class, they're so welcoming that they have these student veterans in their classes. So I do everything I can to help them ease their educational journey and help them get into classes that are filled. And we all know about being filled, right? You know, all those sections being filled. So we try to ease that process as much as possible. In regards also, I've talked to other schools on campus, social behavioral sciences, math and science, and so when the college book is being utilized, we've developed prompts, writing prompts that can be used in sociology classes, that can be used in science classes, that can be used in English classes. It's cross campus, interdisciplinary, and again, this is a way of using these military writing prompts to kind of expose the military presence and student veteran presence on campus. As we know, some of them are a little bit reticent to identify themselves, but we give them every opportunity. We have Veterans Resource Center shirts, we have Veterans Club shirts, we have wristbands that say Chaffey College Veterans Resource Center, and I served on it. So every possibility, if they're willing to do so, we don't force it on them, but if they're willing to do so, we provide this service for them. So, you know, it's been a, you know, great experience for the last 4 years. And this year also, in regards to the college book, the things they carried, we brought together several departments on campus and created a 45-minute film from dog tags to textbooks. And it's been very, very successful. People have been using it in their classes and such. And basically, it's a series of interviews with student veterans. ESL professor was the main person in charge, but it brought together our digital media lab, our film people, our English people, and so as a group and committee of the One Book, One College committee, it brought a diverse faculty population and staff population together to put this film together, and it's been a very successful on our campus, and it's also available on the internet and on our website, on the One Book, One College website, and we're going to probably also put it up on our Chaffey College Veterans Resource Center website as well.
If you really want to know, you really need to make sure that you have time to listen.
This is protection, this is family protection, this is just, I mean, love is one of the most strongest things that we as humans feel, and you know, when you got something like that protecting you, it's hard for anything to defeat you. And their support, and that's the physical thing that I carry the most with me.
I wore my Iraq one for years.
I carried beliefs.
It helped me, like, and the angel, you know, took care of me. Basically thoughts of home.
So I'm not a dean, so I don't have that kind of clout. But I did have something that they didn't have, which was tenure. And with tenure comes a lot of power because you can get away with a lot. And as a counselor, the worst they could do is just put me back in counseling. So that really wasn't an issue for me. So we started this journey in 2008, and I had a lot of support and backing actually from my dean, who was very committed to really helping and establishing some kind of veteran services on our campus. So by 2009, we had gotten a small office that was constantly being overrun by veterans, and we'd have 20, 30 people in that office that really was designed to maybe contain a maximum of maybe 6 to 8 people. So it was really getting a little bit out of control. And then the Chancellor's Office came out, and I'm sure many of you were aware of the VRC grant that they had. But and it was really a great way to just really get that started. But of course, there was no money associated with that. But what it did give us is the opportunity to get the campus to really find that 400 square feet to get us started. So that's sort of where we began, and it really began with me as a 50% reassigned counselor and a student assistant. And at that time, we were not able to get Veterans Work Studies, so it was just me and her. And so, it was really sort of a step-by-step in the sense that we really wanted to create that village that Hillary Clinton talked a lot about, and getting people. We knew that there were veterans on our campus, both in faculty and staff, and how were we going to get support from that village and get that village to become focused and involved. So what we did is we first began by going out to every department and going to all their departmental meetings and just gave a 10-minute presentation on veterans in the classroom, what to expect, and what are some things that they could do to help those veterans in the classroom. And then from there, we went ahead and we started to do even more staff development. So we went out and we put together a Road Home Symposium and invited other campuses to come and join us. And from there, we also began to become involved and do workshops in the staff development days for all faculty and staff, as well as become embedded in new staff development for all the new staff that came on board. So that really helped you sort of get the word out. Another thing, while we didn't have a lot of space, that we thought in order to help also from the outer community is we began doing community screenings of documentaries that were based or focused on veterans issues. One of the things that I do and I'm very careful about is that whenever I do anything that's public, whether I have an author come or whether I have a documentary on women's issues or veterans issues, is I am really adamant about keeping it as apolitical as possible, because we don't want to get into the politics of for or against war or anything like that. We really want to focus on the veteran and what we can do to help them. So that's sort of one of my, hard, fast rules, that whatever we put on, either in the community or on campus, that it become and stay as apolitical as possible. So that was sort of the beginning of getting our community, our village, to become part of that process of helping to support our veterans. And we had a few naysayers on campus. And so we worked very diligently to try and give them more and more information and sort of bring them onto our side. Like the other two campuses, we've had our veterans groups go up before the board and ask for things or to complain about different things and issues. But for the most part, our administration and our president, my dean, were all very, very supportive. And sort of the best thing is they sort of gave me free rein to go out there and to just create whatever I could create and to do whatever I could do. But of course, there was no funding. There was no money. And like the other two, we sort of begged, borrowed, and stole from other departments to get furniture, to get computers. We even were able to get supplies from a local insurance agency who would just say, just give me your order for your office supplies, and would just provide them. So that was sort of the emphasis of where we started, and trying to get the community that we were in to really be supportive. So one of the things that we discovered once we started our Veterans Resource Center was that just being a resource center where we have some computers, we have study areas, we have camaraderie areas, we have coffee, we have a refrigerator, just like many of you do, we were finding that really wasn't enough, because as the veterans were coming to us, I don't know about your campuses, but our campus has a lot of homeless veterans, and many of them don't see themselves as homeless. As you heard yesterday with one of the veterans, they couch surf, but that's really homeless. you know, they don't have a place to hang their hat. They are in their cars sometimes, or they're on friends' couches until they've, you know, it's no longer, they've worn out that welcome and they go somewhere else. And this just keeps going on. So we had a lot of that, and a lot of veterans who were so frustrated and upset that they wouldn't continue, you know, to follow through on getting some services to help them. So what makes us different? What makes us different is that we decided at that point that we were going to turn it around and change it. And so we have a case management model. And so as veterans come in, I have one of our staff members, she's our case manager, and we do an intake, and then she will sit with the veteran, and she will make that phone call. She will get that appointment with them, and then in a week or two, she'll follow up to see whether or not they followed through on that appointment. And if they didn't, we find out what the barrier was and what it will take for them to follow through. So we do a lot. When it comes to the different veteran services, we have an orientation for our veterans. We also started a veterans learning collaborative where it's 12 units of veterans-only classes. We also provide them the books for all of those classes, and those 12 units are transferable or go towards an AA degree. And then you have to be creative. So first semester, we gave them all the books and asked them to bring it back, you know, so that we would have it for the next semester. And then some of it came back, some of it didn't. And then we figured that, you know, that was a little bit too easy since they get a book stipend for the most part. So we asked them for a $50, the next year, a $50 processing fee. And with that money, I put that in a scholarship fund. So at the end of the year, I have a little bit of scholarship money for them. We started in 2009 a Boots to Books class. We really liked the idea that Citrus College started out, so we decided to go ahead and try that out, and it was very, very successful. The retention rates were very, very good, almost 92% retention rate for that class. And it really was very, very helpful to our veterans. When we look back at our Veterans Learning Collaborative, the first couple of years that we taught that, and looking at the statistics in terms of how students did afterwards and how they did during that semester, I was a little disappointed in the data. Looking at that data, I thought, well, you know, 50% did above average, above a C, and 50% did a C or below, and I was pretty depressed about that. I thought, you know, all the marking is really being helpful for these students. But when we sat down and started to look at the demographics and how many services each one of these students got, it became a real eye-opener of how we have to redefine success. And in the one group that we were looking at, we had 5 5150s. And those of you who don't know what that is, that those are students that come forward and tell you that they're either going to harm themselves. We had at least 40% that were basic skills. Another 53% that had PTSD. We had about 10% that were homeless. And we actually had one family with 2 children under the age of 5 that, you know, ended up living in their car. So when we started to look at those demographics and started to look at the services that they had gotten through our center, we realized that just for them to have stayed in school and to have gone through the process, that that was success, that it was a successful class. I think that it was asked in another session as to how do we cherry pick, or how do we get the students in there in that class. And one of the reasons that I'm able to do that is because I see all the students and I sign them into this learning collaborative. I try and fill it with most of my combat vets those that have had several tours, those that may disclose to me that they have PTSD, those that just got discharged Saturday and they're going to start school Monday. So I try to fill it with those first, and then if there's additional space, then we get other veterans in there. But all veterans, as you know, are not the same. You know, someone who's had 4 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq is not going to be the same that the guy that was a human resource clerk, on Hawaii. They're going to be very different. They're going to have some things in common, but there's going to be great differences in terms of how they're going to transition. So we try and do that. This year we also have a Smart Pen program where we're giving out Smart Pens to disabled vets with TBI or learning disabilities. We do veterans probation workshops. We have a fabulous tutoring program that's all volunteer, all community, all professional people. We have over 28 tutors that come in from JPL, Parsons, from Chase, all different, the banks, just all professionals who want to help. And they tutor from anything from physics to calculus down to developmental English. We're part of the U.S. Vets Outside the Wire program, where they will have a therapist come on our campus once a week. We also just recently got into the U.S. Vet Success, where we have a VA voc rehab counselor in our center for 2 days a week. We do, just like as many of you, we have the VA come in with the vet centers. We also have the county, all the things that you all do. But one of the things that we really have become very much involved with is just getting more community involvement. I don't pay for 90% of these things. These are all volunteers. These are all community people that come in. So one of the things that I realized early on is that there are so many people out there that want to help veterans. And really the most difficult part of my job is to assess which ones are genuine and which ones want to just prey upon our veterans. And so that's really the hardest part of my job. By going out to your community, by going out and speaking to Rotary, the VFW, I go out and I speak to the Daughters of the American Revolution. I go to Kiwanis. Anywhere where they want a speaker, they want to talk about our veterans and what we're doing. And you have no idea how much that will come back to me. Even if it's a 10-minute talk, I will get people that will come up. I'll get people weeks later that will call me up and say, I have a donation I would like to give you. What can we do for your veterans? This year at our holiday dinner for our veterans, we had donated over 30 holiday baskets that included a dinner for 4 for our veterans, as well as having our whole dinner paid for. Now Rotary is fighting with the VFW because VFW paid for it. Now they want to do it next year and they don't know how. So I mean, I just stay out of it and just
Wonderful problem to have.
It's a great problem. I went and we also connected with a local church. In fact, a couple of local churches. The Presbyterian Church in one of our connecting cities decided that they really like the idea of working with veterans, although they probably have very few veterans in their district. And they actually put together a veterans ministry just so that they could collect money. And they've given us now $20,000 for scholarships. They provide all the coffee for us, and they've made a veterans blend for us. One of their parishioners owns a coffee roasting company, and he decided that's what he was going to do for us. We also utilize the services that we can get on our campus. So we have now the dental hygiene lab who is donating free cleaning for all our veterans. So they can get free teeth cleaning and x-rays and whatever else the dental hygienists are allowed to do for our veterans. We have the student health center. They send a nurse into our center a couple hours a week. And what she does is she just does a basic triage of a lot of veterans are not going to drive at least for us, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get over to the west side. And so they're not going to go there if they have the flu or if they have a fever or an earache. I mean, they're going to wait until it's, life and death before they're going to go through that traffic. So the nurse will give them an appointment in our health center, just for things that they can handle. If it's anything more serious, then she will make a referral to the VA. And she's wonderful. She goes out to the VA and she makes connections there so that she can refer and hand somebody off to a person and not just to an office. We also have, as many of you also may have, financial aid that comes a couple hours a week, DSPS. So we have a variety of things of that village that's actually helping us put it together. But really the community members, and I think on one of these slides you'll see all the different people that we work with, has really been one of the most substantial connections that you can make to help you is all the people in the community. We're now looking at starting an internship program with the Chamber of Commerce. They're very interested in taking on some of our veterans and putting them in their offices locally. I have a veterans volunteer. She volunteers. She's a retired engineer from JPL who put together our tutoring and mentoring program. And she has no shame. She will go out to anyone and at any time to try and recruit them to become a tutor. We were looking for an anatomy tutor, and she couldn't find one, so she made an appointment with her chiropractor and spent the hour just convincing him to become our tutor. So I guess if I can impart any wisdom at all is to really go out to your community and look for those resources. And you will see that, even talking to a women's auxiliary or talking to, a group of, book lovers that just want to know about veterans. I will go and speak to just about anyone. And very, very often I do not leave there without a check in my pocket. It's really very heartwarming to know that there are so many people that want to help. I often get some silly phone calls, silly in the sense that, I had this one older woman, I'm sure she was well into her 60s, that called me and said she wanted to do something. And I said, well, what would you like to do? I said, can you tutor, any subject? And she says, well, no, I don't think so. I said, well, what do you think that maybe you can do to help? And she said, well, if they need a ride to their medical appointments, I can give them a ride. And I just had this vision of an OEFOIF veteran who already drives like this and like a bat out of hell trying to be in a car with a very nice little lady that is probably stopping at everything. So yeah, that probably didn't work out. But I did, give her an idea that maybe she could just, would she be willing to bake cookies? And she said yes. And bringing food. I mean, we have people that stop off and bring cookies and desserts and just, anything that they feel, good about leaving for our veterans, and they feel this sense of having done something, their share, and we're gratified to know that they're out there and that they care for our veterans. I even have a masseuse who comes once a week, and she gives out free massages for our veterans. And sometimes we don't fill all those appointments, so I can tell you that me and my dean do, we do help out to make sure that her appointment list is full. So there's a lot of organizations out there. I know this has been said over and over again, and you really do need to create, I think, a list of what your needs are, a list of things that are realistic. Because once you start working with the community, that's what they want. They want to know some tangible things that they can do. Sometimes there isn't anything that we really need in terms of supplies or anything in that matter. But I always advocate for them to give us money for scholarship. And I, you know, if you give me $500, I will name that scholarship after you. You know, and I'm very happy to do that for any organization. If they want to give me $500 for our students, I will name that scholarship for them. I, at one point, started out writing a solicitation letter for scholarship money and sent it out to every VFW post from here all the way to San Diego. And that turned up a wonderful surprise. Our local VFWs went ahead and contributed a couple of scholarships, but it ended up, one of my letters ended up in Santa Clarita to a VFW post there, and it was read by a former Pasadena City College graduate. And this man was a Vietnam veteran. He had amassed quite a fortune for himself, and this letter really touched him, and he drove up with his VFW post commander and drove up and handed us a check for $3,000 to go ahead and give scholarships. And then for the last year and a half of his life, he came up almost once a month, participated and paid for all kinds of events for our veterans, bought us flags for our Veteran Center, and unfortunately he passed away. But it was such a wonderful, heartfelt connection, and our veterans in the Veterans Club just adopted him, and just, you know, it was just really a wonderful interaction of community. So you never really know who you're talking to, you never really know who you're outreaching to, but that became sort of my second job, is to go out there and advocate and to talk about veterans issues and to get them to really become part of that village. We now have 2 adjunct counselors as well as me. We are expanding, we're doubling our space, and I'm hearing rumblings of a veterans village, and that's making me really happy. And we will have a VOC rehab counselor, a psychological counselor. Our certifying official will be there, 2 adjunct counselors, and myself and my case manager rotating in and out of that village. So I really emphasize that really connecting with your outside community. I don't believe that money is going to come down very soon from either the Chancellor's office or the VA. I think we have to make do. I think the government wrote a check that we are having to cash with these veterans. And I think that we have to draw in our greater community to come and help make those payments, because I think that it's going to become even more costly as time goes on. We did all of this without a budget. We got a budget last semester, which I'm so grateful for. We were supposed to get one last fall, and when I approached my dean and said, well, do we have our budget yet? And she said, well, this was before Prop 30. She said, we do, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because I know you're going to be really unhappy. And she said, I'm going to wait until after Prop 30, and I'm going to try again. And she did, and she did a wonderful job. So I'm very blessed to have that kind of support. By the end of last year, we had assisted our veterans in securing over $200,000 in various emergency funding, disability back pay, unemployment benefits, food banks, professional work clothes, gas cards, utility bills, hotel vouchers, first, last, and security for permanent housing, about half a dozen VASH housing, and emergency car repairs. And I couldn't have done that without our case manager, who really was tenacious in getting these veterans to follow through and to make connections. Those local churches give us gas cards and food cards. When we were behind and were having problems with our certifying, they came through with over $2,000 worth of gas and food cards to give out to our veterans to help tide them over until things kicked in. So those connections are just invaluable to us. And if you just reach out to some of these organizations, you will be very, very surprised at what will come back for you.
Great. Well, thank you to all three of our presenters. Questions? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The question is, do we have a foundation, and how does the foundation work with our scholarship? We have it, well, there's two ways. Yes, the foundation is an issue, and I don't know how it is on your campus, but it was for my campus, and it was, you can get an account if you have $10,000. If you don't have $10,000, you can't get an account, but you can't get an account unless you have $10,000. And to go out there and find somebody to give you $10,000 is really hard. So we also have a student bank, which we have accounts. Small accounts is where some of the clubs put their money in, and it's not a 501(c)(3). So if I get donations from foundations, from churches, from individuals, associations who don't really need the tax write-off, I will put it in that. I started putting it in that fund. I also got a former board member that was working with the foundation to sort of make a back alley deal that they could run some of the lesser checks through the foundation and then give back to us. So we were able to do it that way until we got our big donation of the $20,000 for scholarships. So that's sort of how I, get around it. We have a student bank, and through the student club, we're able to do that.
To kind of piggyback on that, we have a foundation, and we have no limitations on the amount of money. So
Mm-hmm.
we have the account, but the actual going out or sending a letter. The actual going out or sending a letter,
Mm-hmm.
the solicitation,
Mm-hmm.
it is a fine line with our foundation, because they see that as their job.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to tell them what our needs are, and then they go out and get. If it's on their high enough on their priority list. So I guess looking at the territory and how you do that, how have you been able to successfully navigate that so that you guys are working together and there's not that friction between who's soliciting and who's not? Because their concern is you're going out and you're sending this letter, but we may be going after them for a larger donation. We may be going after them for something that's more targeted or specific.
The easy answer and an honest answer is ignorance and tenure. That's my first answer. The second answer is soliciting VFWs, I'm sure, is not on the high priority list of foundation. So they're not going to be soliciting from American Legion and VFW. And I view that as reaching out to fellow veterans. I don't view that as a capital campaign or anything like that. So it's never come up with my foundation. Now I know enough that I wouldn't go to the Bank of America and ask them for money, or any of our big donors within the city. I reach out when I go to Rotary and I go to the Chamber of Commerce or wherever else I speak, and that's just a general thing that I say, that we like to pull in scholarship money. If they give me a check, that's wonderful. If they don't, it's okay, but I've planted that seed. But the first solicitations was kept to veteran organizations. So that's just not a place foundations go to.
There was another hand there.
Not to get off subject with that, but the idea that I was trying to come up with is all of our veterans at a campus at Chabot College, we love the fact that our president has given us this space. We love the fact that by commencement next, the coming commencement, we're going to actually have a bigger space. We love the fact that we have people that are giving us all kinds of money. We've got a new foundation that's going to be started up by a new foundation director. We have a lot of things that are up and coming, but one of the problems, back to my board of trustee member over there, is when you guys said that your veteran work studies actually keep the doors open, we've been told specifically, no, you don't. We don't think so. And so I guess my question is there anyone else that has run into that problem and found a way to say, you know, our veterans that are work studies, that are under contract, because that's actually what I am. I'm under contract with the VA as a work study, that I sit in the work study office, I do my thing, but if my certifying official is gone, or if my advisor is gone, I have to leave as well. Our campus is very strict about who's in the office and who's in the open space. And at one time they said, well, let's just leave the doors open. Everything will be okay. You know, there's people all over the place that are monitoring and watching, and that's never been good enough. So I was wondering if there's anyone that's been able to figure out a way around that, because at this point, it's not ask for forgiveness later. It's the permission has been definitely dismissed, and you're not going to do it.
Well, I'm not sure that you would want to ask for that kind of permission, because I think if you think about it, what other office anywhere on campus is run only by students? And I feel that the campus has to make a commitment to keep it staffed. I don't think that we should put that burden on students. I think that there needs to be a staff member there. Now, when you say that when they're not there, you can't keep the doors open, I'm not quite sure what that means. I know that when, you know, people go to lunch, or if I have a meeting, or if, you know, we're both out, we still leave it open, but it's not open the whole day, or it's not a day where no one is there.
And that's a very good point, because a lot of times, if I'm sitting there and my certifying official goes to lunch, I am there. I am in the office. I have everyone's file right in front of me. Right. But when it comes to a emptied room with 2 computers and a couple desks, I can't be in that room for any amount of time without somebody knowledgeable or even in that room. And I guess that's we're trying to find that commitment from from the entire school. Hey, here's someone to staff it. But I guess that's the point that we're trying to get.
Well, I think the way that we've responded to it, again, knowing the lack of funding and where we're at, we were looking at the Veterans Center as providing information. So students, the students who know the best regarding veterans are veterans themselves. So the idea of referrals, you know, saying, hey, I'm having these issues. Well, Jenny up in admissions and records can help you with this. Or our counseling can, you know, will help you with the ed plan things. So it's the idea, in my case, where they're providing information and more like a hand-holding, buddy type stuff. I agree. We need, and that's why I've been pushing so hard for staffing. But I'm not going to keep the doors closed when my vets are having these needs. And if it means to come in and crash and use the computers, I'm not going to close those doors. And I will ask for forgiveness later.
My name is Mark Minkler. I'm currently the counselor at Irvine Valley College, but previously I was the administrator of the Veterans Program at Palomar College in San Marcos. This last semester, Palomar certified 1,600 veteran students in a semester. It's a very large program. We had a very robust work-study program. We had over 20 VA work studies hired at any given time. And the way that we got around it, and this is just all about each individual school's HR policy, in addition to hiring them as VA work study, we also put them through the process with HR as if they were volunteers on campus. They had to get their TB shots. They had to do a background. And then we would allow them to have access to our data systems. They could make appointments in SARS. They could monitor the center, because we were never getting enough staff, obviously, to handle a group that big. But we assembled a very robust team, and we were open from 7 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening, and so they were fully integrated as part of the staff. And it was a great way to mentor and create leadership opportunities, as well as create additional kind of scholarship or income opportunities. The VA used to have a a ratio, like you could only have one VA work study for every 100 students, but they've done away with that. They said that basically you can hire as many VA work study students as you need to run a successful program. And so there is definitely ways that you can do this. You know, it's just a matter of the school has to adapt the HR policy that says that they're willing to do it. But I wanted to really quickly just mention two other things, because I've been doing this for 10 years. And, you know, two potential problems. One is you need to have a code of conduct in your veteran resource centers. These veteran students need to know that they are also students. And if you don't hold them to a code of conduct, unfortunately, some vets will behave badly. You have, you know, men, women, gays, minorities. You have children of veterans and spouses that need to be comfortable in this area. And if it's not supervised correctly, you know, you can have a situation where it starts to devolve into a barracks-type atmosphere, and it can be pretty hostile. So that's, you know, that's one thing. And then the other thing I'd say is everyone likes the idea of a one-stop shop, but be careful based on your square footage, because if you co-locate a counseling office next to a veterans lounge, we want them to be loud and have fun and have a place to, you know, blow off steam. But if a veteran is in an office crying because of PTSD and trying to have a counseling session, you know, if the geographics don't work out well, sometimes it's better to have the counseling areas and the study areas separated from the lounge areas so that there's not this conflict and tension that's always going on. Just a couple points I wanted to add.
Great. More questions?
In regards to student work study, I had an issue with the union that I was having students take jobs of classified. And one of the agreements is the way we're doing it is that I have a classified person if my classified employee is not in the resource center, then I have a classified person from one of my areas, one of the units I have, go by once in a while, as long as, and that the student staff know that in an emergency they know who to contact that's there, and that has met the agreement, at least in our district.
And I can't emphasize enough on that code of conduct guidelines, because it really can devolve very quickly. So that there needs to be some really, you know, apparent code of conduct so that it doesn't devolve. And I know that all of us have an issue with language, and so we sometimes, you know, yeah, sometimes we do a swear jar, or they have to bring donuts for everybody, or something. Because you do want to, I mean, and one of the things that I say to veterans, well, you know, this is supposed to be our place, blah, blah, blah. And I make it very, very apparent to them that one of our jobs is to help them transition into a professional space and learn professionalism. And you're not going to go into a corporate office and hear all these F-bombs going off, that they need to act, you know, professionally. So that's sort of one of the things that we try. I mean, you don't want the president or the board members or some local church group volunteer coming in and hearing that kind of language going on and on and on. But we really do have to teach them professionalism.
So I have
At Chafee, we established a code of conduct for the Veterans Resource Center. It's posted, and when every student veteran comes in, part of the introductory process is that they're made aware of this code of conduct. And we don't have it put it online, but it is posted in the Veterans Resource Center as well.
Is your code of conduct different from the student's code of conduct?
It's aligned. It's aligned with the student code of conduct. However, there's some uniqueness here. Like one of the ones, because we have an open space, one of the ones that we all agreed on was no kill stories. So that's not in the student code.
Thank goodness.
So my name is Trish Guevara. I'm from Kenyatta College, and I just took over the position as a Veterans Resource Coordinator. One of the things that we're running into is the code of conduct. The veterans, we all have an agreement of how they want the space to be preserved and how we're going to interact. But when we have civilians come in, that's where I run into point of tension, because they look at the civilians and the civilians look at the veterans, and they don't know how to interact. And we have free food on Tuesdays. We have donation pastries that come in on Wednesdays. And so sometimes some of the students civilian students will just walk in and take these pastries. And so I'm not sure how to kind of navigate that because I'm not housed in there. You know, we don't have staff that come into the space. I'm in the Learning Center running around doing 3 other programs. And so I'm wondering if there's any tips on to how we can better inform students so that they're not walking in and the veterans aren't, you know, creating a hostile environment.
Do you have your veterans, veteran work study in there at all? No. Okay, well, that's how we handle. We have veterans work study at the front desk that come into our center. And one of the questions they ask is, you know, they say, hi, how are you? And are you a veteran? And this is the Veterans Resource Center. And we don't have that problem because we do have a lot of free food and things. And that hasn't been an issue. When it has become an issue once or twice, the veterans themselves let them know that this is the veteran space. And you know, and so that sort of takes it off my shoulders. I don't, as long as they're polite, I don't intercede. I don't say anything. But usually having a work study there that lets whoever is coming in know that this is the Veterans Resource Center, that usually is enough. Dan, all the way in the back.
You know, one of the themes that keeps coming up is related to staffing. And a lot of these things are there eyes on, you know, what's going on in the Veterans Resource Center? Do you have enough individuals that are bargaining unit or union employees doing the work? You know, I'm a firm believer in student workers, federal work study or VA work study, yet there's limitations. So one of the things I wanted to say is really engage your local CSEA early, as well as your faculty association. If you have folks that might infringe on counseling activities, engage those associations so they can be a partner, not a combatant. You want them as an ally. So, you know, in that situation, it's not necessarily the district policy. What drives district policy often is the bargaining unit. So have those conversations with CSEA leadership. Say, hey, these are the things we'd like to do. At the institution I'm from, we haven't had those issues whatsoever with infringing on bargaining unit work. They work with us to say, hey, here's the boundary. Here's the safe place that you can use the student workers. That's one piece. The other piece that I wanted to bring up about the staffing issues is we can't keep resolving these issues without pushing for funding. If we keep putting Band-Aids on things as institutions, the issue's still there. These are just little symptoms that we're, you know, the whack-a-mole putting these things out. When it comes to code of conduct and having someone in the center that's going to have their eyes on behavior, when it comes to keeping the doors open, what really needs to happen is at some point have some categorical funding from the state, some support, some set-aside funding that will give us the staffing we need to support these veterans coming back. Institutions on their own, we can't afford this, we can't do this, and we're seeing all these issues come up. So, you know, I'm a firm believer, and I'd like to, you know, see others support this, of categorical funding as we do with EOPS and DSPS CalWorks. So.
Thank you, Terrence.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm the certifying official at Chapey College. I did want to make additional note from Dean Danielli that all our VA work study and federal work study students go through what we call a SHINE program. SHINE is a 4-hour orientation which basically is required by Chapey College for the federal work study, and we've incorporated that with our VA work study on how to answer phones, how to act professionally, and that's been very successful. And at the end of that, they take a test, get a certificate of completion, and all VA work studies are required to take that.
Time for one more question.
Well, this is a money question. I agree that we need categorical funding, but we also get the money per certified student. I'm curious as to the panel as well as in the audience, where does that money go when it comes to your school? Is it offsetting someone's salary who's in the Veterans Resource Center? Is it going to students? Is it going to supplies, travel? Where is that money going? Because our Veterans Resource Center doesn't directly get that benefit. So I'm trying to lobby for that, and so knowing where everybody else is sending theirs and using theirs would be helpful.
I think there's a huge variety of where that money goes. I think some campuses put it in their general fund and never to be seen again. It's supposedly supposed to go to help for the training for the certifying officials. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, you certifying officials out there, I think that's where that money is designated for. I never see it.
On our campus, I believe it's used to actually augment the salary of the certifying official. That's how we make it work.
Yes. It goes to the certifying official.
I want to just make one point about money, and I've been pulling this one for a couple years. That is that we give away millions of dollars a year back to the federal government through our BOG waiver program. If we would include in the requirement for BOG waiver, or to ask whether or not you're getting your tuition paid, then we would be billing these students for the tuition that the federal government would pay. Right now, we give BOG waivers to students on the GI Bill, on the 9/11 GI Bill, so we charge them zero tuition. So what we're doing is we're substituting state dollars for federal dollars. Because if we charge them to tuition, the students aren't paying the tuition, the federal government pays the tuition back to the state. If we just asked the question or eliminated that from the BOG waiver, we would create millions and millions and millions of dollars in extra tuition payments that could be put towards veterans programs here in California.
Well, I have to respond to that one as the as kind of the mother of the BOG program. If we were to do that, there would be no gain for students. It's very likely that the money that the state now provides for BOG fee waivers would go to something else unrelated to supporting these students. And there's actually a move afoot to say that any student who gets a federal Pell Grant shouldn't have a BOG waiver because the federal Pell Grant includes funding for tuition and fees. The only problem is because the BOG fee waiver now pays tuition and fees, the students have that Pell Grant money to use for books and supplies to support their living expenses. So if we were to shift the cost to the federal Pell Grant for tuition and fees, the students would simply get less money. So that's just a caution. And
GI Bill, it's different. It's a separate item. They get billed for the tuition or they don't. If we bill them zero for the tuition, the federal government pays the institution zero. It's not a matter of shifting, it's a matter of whether we bill the federal government or we waive it and eat the cost as a state.
okay, well, this is a longer conversation. I'd be glad to continue it out in the hall. Nobody seems to want to go anywhere, but I think we're out of time. So, okay, we'll take one more. Right here.
We've had this argument with our financial aid department who tried to pull BOG waivers for those who are on the GI Bill because we put in a waiver. But students will take classes that aren't required for their GI Bill but don't want to dual major. So, I mean, you can't really pull it, I guess, necessarily. The students argue that. I went through this with financial aid, so BOG needs to be there regardless. We can't just, use the funding from the GI Bill for them. So it's just what we use it
I
on.
want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank our distinguished panel members. I want to thank our volunteer microphone carrier, Dan Crump from American River College. You got to work out there.